Hello everybody, this is Eddie Nünning from MIDI Guitarist, and I welcome you to the second video in the series, in the open-ended series of MIDI Guitar Wisdom. Last time we dealt with the notes on the fretboard, and today we'll deal with the chords in the first position. To be more precise, I'll show you all you have to know in order to construct all the chords directly. I'll show you this thing I bought when I was very little. It's called 1200 bar chords for the guitar, and it's full with chord grids, thousands, well, 1200. And basically, it's much easier than that, so I'll throw this away. And we'll do it in an easy 5-step program. The first step will be that I show you 2 chord structures on the guitar, and those are the only 2 chord structures there are. The rest you can derive from these 2 chord structures. That's the first step. The second step, I'll show you how these chord structures come about, how they are constructed. And once you get into the nitty-gritty of that, you'll be able to follow the next step, which will be deriving other chords from these 2 chord structures. We'll derive 6 chords altogether. That's the third step. In the fourth step, I'll talk about chord transformations, meaning changing single notes in order to get a new chord, like this. In this chord grid book I just threw away, you would have had 3 grids, but a pianist would say, well, that's a G major 7, and a G7, and they would just change 1 note at a time, and the rest stays the same. That's the principle. And the fifth and best step, there I'll show you my chord structure list, where I show you a little spreadsheet with chord grids above, and I'll show you all the transformations you can do from a D chord and an F chord. So that'll come up in the 5th part, so stay till the end. As an aside anyway, I would suggest that you watch the video once till the end, even if you don't get all the information right away. But it's like going to a new place. You look at a map and say, oh, that's the way I'll go there, but you can't go all the way anyway. So this is the same thing. You just watch it once and then you take it step by step. And another word to the people who are not so familiar speaking English or hearing English, you can always switch on your subtitles and choose the automatically generated subtitles by YouTube. So let's have fun and dig in with step 1. Welcome to the first step. So as I promised, I'll confront you with 2 chords, namely the G and the E major chord. And these are the only 2 chords you have to know about in order to understand all the rest. Let's have a look at them. Here you see the G major chord, 3 fingers used, and the E major chord. I'll just play them, and if you have a look at the piano keyboard, you might see a difference. Here comes the G major chord. As you can see, it looks a bit like a comb, just single notes in between, but quite consistent in the beginning. And if I play the E major chord now, you see this gap, and that means, well, it might be a major chord as well, but it has got a different structure. It sounds like major, just like the G chord, but the chord notes are aligned in a different way. And these basic concepts we'll have a look at in the next step, when I'll show you the structure, how a major chord is built, and how it is adapted to the guitar. See you in the second step then. So, welcome to step 2. In this step, I'll show you how a chord is constructed, first in notes, then on the piano, and then we move that over and transfer it to the guitar. So, let's have a look at this graphic I prepared for you here. And first, please look downwards on this notation system. This clef is called G clef because this keyhole defines the note G. We want to start, in order to get to our G major chord, with a G major scale. And that consists of just the notes of the alphabet starting from G, with one exception, which I'll show you. First note is G, second is A, third is B, fourth C, D is the 5th, E is the 6th. And because we want to have a whole note step here, from the 6th to the 7th, this is not an F like it was in C major, but it's called F sharp, which is the black key to the right of the F key. And finally, the 8th note is the G again, which is called an octave because it's the same note name, just 8 notes higher. These are the notes. And if we play them on the piano, it's quite straightforward. The G starts off, whole tone step to an A, whole tone step to a B, half step to a C, whole step to a D, whole step to an E, whole step to the F sharp, and a half step finally to the G. Quite straightforward. That's what we need in order to generate our G major chord. But first, let's have a look at the guitar. And there we have the low E string. In the 2nd fret is the F sharp. And finally, it's the G, our starting point. So we start off with a G followed by an A. And if we moved on our E string, it would look exactly like this on the E string. But what I did, I show you how it works on the guitar, because you don't move on in a linear way, but after having started with a G, you take the A, but as the open A string. So this means it's the open A string. Then you move on the A string to the B to the C. So the B would be here and the C would be here. And then you move on again to the D string, which would be the open D string. And on the D string in the 2nd fret, you would have the E. In the 4th fret, you would have the F sharp. And in the 5th fret, you would have the G, or you could take the open G string. This is basically moved to a vertical way on the guitar. It's not like you play linearly, but you play vertically, because as opposed to the keyboard, the guitar can only play one note at a time on a string. And so for each note of a chord, you need a new string, as opposed to the piano. So we move on to the next slide, and there we'll have a look at how a chord is built. Let's have a look at the notes first again. This is the same graphic as we had before in the notes, but a major chord is built out of the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note of a major scale. The building stones for our chord is the G, the 1st note, the B, the 3rd note, and the D, the 5th note. For good measure, you can add an octave again, another G, and if you move higher, these notes are just doubled. But all in all, we have just 3 different notes, the 1, the 3, and the 5. If you look at the piano, that's the circled notes, the G, the B, the D, and the G again. If we have a look at the guitar, the 1 is here, the 3 is here, the B. Then we have an open D string, an open G string, and then we've got the B string, so the 3rd is doubled here. And finally, we've got another G on the open E string here again. So it's a bit more complicated. This thing looks much more straightforward on the piano, but bear with me. I'll show you how to get to grips with this. So if we have a look at the G major scale on the guitar, we can dig deeper into this. As you know, we need G, we don't need A for the chord, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And the notes we take is the G, the A we don't want, we take the B, the C we don't want, we take the D, those 2 we don't want, we take the G again, we don't want the A, we want the B. And here's one thing, as you can only play one chord note at a time, you can decide if you want to play the B on the B string or the open B, or more AC/DC-like, you play the D, which you can because the B is here already. And on the high E string, you've got the G again. Those were the notes. If we look at the G major scale, as far as the functions of the notes are concerned, it's the 1 on the E string, the 3, the 3rd note on the A string, then the open D string is the 5th, the open G string is the 8th, the B string is the open B, and finally the 8th again. If we look at the structure, solely omitting all the other notes we don't need, this is what we come up with. The structure is from the root, the 1, to the top notes, 1, 3, 5, 8, and then 3, 8 again. This is very important to remember. This is the basic structure we need for 2 other chords, 1, 3, 5, 8, then 3 and 8 again. That's for the G major chord. Now let's move over with the same system to an E major chord. It's basically the same, just that E has a lot more sharps. You see here an F sharp, a G sharp, a C sharp, and a D sharp. Those are the changed notes from an E major scale. So if we start here, we want the E. So we take the open E. But then we would need as a third note the G sharp, which we can't take because we can only play one note at a time on a string. So we omit the G sharp here and move on. We don't want the A, we want the B. So we have the E, the B, this we don't want, this we don't want. So we are here at the E, we omit this one. And here finally we find the G sharp, we omit it on the low string. So the G sharp sits here, no A. The open B string is fine, these two we don't need, and an open E string. So if we look at the functions again for the E major scale, we've got the 1 on the low E string, no 3 because we have to have the 1. Then the fifth note, so here's the gap we saw in the intro. There's no third, and that's why there's a gap in this chord. It's from the 1 right to the 5. From there, we've got the octave, and then as the fourth note, you finally get your third, and then the open 5 and 8. So an E major chord, it has the same ingredients, but it has a different structure. One as the root, as we always have, but then we've got this gap from 1 to 5, and then we got 8, 3, 5, 8. So this is very, very important to remember. The E structure is 1, 5, 8, 3, 5, 8, and the G structure is 1, 3, 5, 8, like you would do on a piano. With this in mind, we'll move over to step 3. Welcome to part 3. This is where the fun really begins. Now we've laid down the theoretical background, we can start to apply this in a very practical way to the guitar. So let's have a look at this graphic. I promised you part 3 would be about derived chords, and we're right in the middle of it. If you look at this graphic, we start off with our G major. It looks a bit different now because I've got a color scheme here, so you will be better able to follow. We have our structure as we saw in the last step. We've got the root, the 1, the 3, the third on the A string, then the open D string, which is 5, the octave G string, 8, 3, and 8. This is a major structure on the guitar. If I took this major structure and just put it one string down, then my fourth finger would land in somewhere of nowhere. These two fingers would stay, but it doesn't sound like a C major because the B string is tuned a half step down. So this 8 doesn't move to the B string, but we have to compensate on the B string. And that's the only reason that this C major looks different from the G major. You just put this stair kind of constellation, one string up, this one drops into nowhere, and the 8 has to go one step up because the B string is tuned a half step lower, and the 3 is fine again. So you've got the same constellation from the root, which is 1, 3, 5, 8, 3, just like we had here. 1, 3, 5, 8, 3. And for good measure, another 8, which we don't really need. And finally, if I moved this C chord over like this should be an F chord. Doesn't sound like an F chord, because I have to compensate the B string again, so it's not an open string like it was here, but it is a pressed string in the first fret. So now I've got the same constellation as in the previous two chords, 1, 3, 5, 8. So bear in mind the two derivative chords of G major with the same structure are C and F, and you have to compensate on the B string. That's why the C looks like this and the F looks like this. Now let's move over to our E major type chord, where we found out that there is this gap. So we have the open string, which is 1. Here's a 5. Here's the 8. 3, 5, 8. So that's E major, as we found out. So if I just took my finger constellation and put it one string upwards, it would look like what you might know as an A minor, this constellation. But as we have learned already, the B string has to be compensated for. In order to be major, we have to move this a half step up. This is the same constellation, 1, 5, 8, 3, 5, 1, 5, 8, 3, 5, as the E major chord, but it looks different because you have to compensate on the B string. So this is the same structure from the root, but a different picture. So if I move this to the upper three strings, a D would have to look like a row actually, but again, I have to compensate on the B string, one fret up. That's why this D chord looks like this triangle in order to compensate on the B string. So we have the same structure, 1, 5, 8, 3. Bear in mind, please, the E major chord has two derivative chords, the A and the D. They look different because you have to compensate on the B strings, both of them. That's why they look totally different, but have the same constellation of intervals, 1, 5, 8, 3. Bear that in mind and learn it by heart, please. And see you in step 4. Welcome to step 4. Now the fun really begins, I would say, because we will deal with some very practical examples. So let's dig right into it. Here you see my first chord changes, and what we deal with is moving just one note by one fret and getting a different chord. If you apply your knowledge of 1, 3, 5, 8, 3, 8 to the knowledge that a major seventh chord is the same as a G major chord, just that the eighth has to be moved one fret downwards, and that's it. This one you can't move downward, obviously, but this 8 you can move downward by one fret. And so by moving just one note, you arrive at a G major 7. I wouldn't learn those as two entities. I would just say, well, this is the structure of a G major, and this is the structure of a G major 7th. Just one note lower as far as the eighth are concerned, and the rest stays the same. And the good thing about this is you can apply this knowledge directly to the derived chords because, you know, they've got the same structure. 1, 3, 5, 8, 1, 3, 5, 8. So you can do the same with the C major right off the bat. You move the eighth down to a major 7, which makes this an open string, and this is C major to C major 7s. For F, it's the same. You know, 1, 3, 5, 8. The top note is the 8, so it moves one fret down. F major to F major 7. First example. Second example, we start again with G major. This time we want to have an add ninth chord. And the only thing you have to know is that add 9 means you raise 1 8. This one, we will choose this one, by 2 frets. And that's it. The rest stays the same. The only thing I do here is I take my second finger and mute this string in order to make it easier, because I have 2 3s in this chord anyway, and 1 is enough. It's the 9th, 2 frets above the 8. G major, G add 9th. Very nice chord. And you can apply that directly to C major, you know, 1, 3, 5, 8, and the 8 moves up by 2 frets, and you arrive at a C add 9. C major to C add 9. And finally, our F chord. It's the same structure from the D string upwards, 1, 3, 5, 8. You know, the 8 has to be raised 2 frets, and so this is F major, and this is F add 9. One example from the E chord. This is the different structure with the gap 1, 5, 8, 3, 5, 8. And if you want to make an E major chord into an E minor chord, you just lower the third, the 3, by 1 fret. You might know these already, but you don't have to learn them as 2 different entities again, because the rest stays the same. It's just one note that changes. So this is E major, and this is E minor. All the notes stay, just one note moves 1 fret downwards. And this can be applied directly to the derivative chords. A major, same structure, 1, 5, 8, 3. So A minor is 1, 5, 8, flat 3. The rest stays the same. And finally, D major, 1, 5, 8, 3, to D minor, 1, 5, 8, flat 3. So. And this is where we'll take off for our final step 5, where I'll show you all the derivatives from D major to you name it. I'll show you the chord structure list. See you then. Welcome to our fifth and final step. Now you're about to become a real professional as far as chords in the first position are concerned. I left you with a D chord in the last step, and there we'll take off right away and have a look at this spreadsheet here, which I call the chord structure list. If you have a look, the first definition is the major chord, which has a 1, a 3, a 5, and an 8. This is what you see here, but the structure is 1, 5, 8, 3. So you have to know where the notes are. It's not like F in this constellation, but 1, 5, 8, 3. The chord structure list then tells you, in order to get from a major chord to a minor chord, which note, which is printed a bit thicker here, which note changes. And here you see how many half steps you have to go up or down in order to do that. The colored note is the one that's going to be changed. If you go, as we had in the last example, from D major to D minor, just the third, just moves one fret down. So that's why most people think that these are two different chords, because you have to change the fingering, but it's quite easy actually. And so we'll move down this list very quickly, and I'll show you all these transformations on the chord structure list. Next example is from D major to D major 7. You see, 1, 3, 5 stays the same. Major 7 means the 8th moves one fret down to the major 7th. So this is D major and this is D major 7. Next example, same principle, from D major to D7, 1, 3, 5 stay the same, and the 7 moves, which means the 8th moves 2 steps down, of 2 frets down, and it looks like this. D major, D7. The rest stays the same. So we just think about the notes we have to change. Now from D major to D minor 7, there are 2 notes we have to change, because we have to change the third to a minor third and the 8th to a 7. So this is D major and this is D minor 7 with 1, 5, 7 minor third. Next example, add 9. We had that before with the G row. So here it says from 8 to 9, 2 steps up. We know the 8 is here, so the 9 will be in the 5th fret on the B string, and this will be a barred chord. So D, D at 9. Next one, D sus4, which means the 3rd is suspended in favor of the 4th, which is 1 fret up, as you can see here. The 3rd goes to the 4th, which is 1 fret up. So this is D major, this is D sus4. Next example, D to D sus2 is the 3rd again, goes 2 frets down to the sus2. So this is D major, D sus2. The rest stays the same as usual. So D major to D6, this time the 5th moves up 2 frets. So this is D major, D6. Here it gets a bit more complicated, or complex I would say, because from D major to D minor 7 flat 5, as you can see here, we need the minor third, we need the 7th, which goes down from the 8th, and we need a so-called flat 5. So 3 notes move down, which makes it from here to here, or like this, whatever you want to do. And 2 more to go, D major to D augmented. Augmented means that the 5th is raised by 1 fret, as you can see here. 1, 3 stay the same, 8th as well, but the 5th gets a sharp 1 fret up. So this is D major, this is D augmented. And last but not least, D major to D diminished 7. All 3 notes move down. The 5th, the 8th moves down 3 steps to a flat 7, and the 3rd moves down to a minor third. So this is D major, and this is D diminished 7. Just very quick look at a different chord type. So you see it's the same from F major. If you remember, it's a derivative from G, so it has the structure 1, 3, 5, 8. If we want to turn an F major into an F minor, the 3rd goes down 1 fret. So this is F major, And this is F minor. One last example, F major to F major 7. The 8th goes down. So this is F major. This is F major 7th. So the video has become a lot longer than I intended to, but this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I hope I could be of use to you. If so, I would really appreciate a like, a comment with questions, I'll answer them, and perhaps a subscription. So you'll get informed when the next videos from the MIDI Guitarist channel and the MIDI Guitar Wisdom series will be released. I hope to see you then. Wish you a lot of luck with the concepts I taught to you, and I'm open to all sorts of questions and hope to see you in the next video.